Hi there, and welcome to this episode of the Guns Magazine podcast. I'm your host and the editor of Guns Magazine, Brent Wheat. Thanks for joining us here on one of the world's biggest gun talk programs as we chat with the interesting folks who make up the world of shooting. Well, we've kind of been on a roll lately talking about old school shooting and revolvers, and folks are really interested in that topic. So one question we get quite a bit is, okay, I've bought a revolver, I want to carry a revolver, what modifications do I need? I probably need to spend thousands of dollars, right? Well, not necessarily. So I know a few things about revolvers, but the expert here is Roy Huntington. So I called him up and we recorded a conversation about what he recommends to folks when they bring him a new revolver and say, here, what do I need to do with this? So we're going to talk to Roy right after this quick word from our great sponsor, Armasight. Step up your game with Armasight's cutting-edge thermal and night vision binoculars. Built for hunters, tactical pros, and outdoor enthusiasts who demand clarity and reliability in any environment. Discover their performance and durability trusted by hunters and professionals worldwide. Gear up now at Armasight.com. Stop looking, start seeing. Well, hey there, Roy. It's combat time.
Pew, 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 pew. Yeah.
Well, today's program is kind of a continuation of, we've kind of been on a roll here lately, officially and unofficially, about revolvers, and my gosh, people have lost their darn minds. And I mean in a good way. It's been cool, and people keep saying more. So today we're going to talk more, and we're going to talk about revolver combat modifications.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
And I will say this is my new Charter Arms 380 Coyote, and I just got this literally yesterday. Double check. And I'm intrigued. I'm going to shoot it, and I think it might be something the little wife might like to shoot, because being a 380, you know, we've talked before, we're not huge fans of 380, but if you're in a situation where you're recoil sensitive or you've got physical problems and all that, this might be one answer. So we'll look for that in an upcoming Guns magazine. But anyway, I got to call today's show. You suggested the topic, and we're going to call it the Roy Huntington Show, because as we've discussed, I was that last generation to be issued a revolver, and we carried them 2 or 3 or 4 years. I don't remember exactly. So I didn't really get heavy into them, and I hadn't even really messed around with revolvers until the last 4 or 5 years. So I remember my combat modification was a set of Hogue grips and speed loaders. Okay, so there's the extent of my combat modifications. But so today I'm going to turn it over to you, and hope you'll carry the show and talk about what you need to do and maybe what you shouldn't be doing to your carry revolver. And I will say there's one thing I know right off the gate. If you want to do an action job, don't start cutting coils. We've talked about that before. Don't do that. Things go badly. So, combat modifications for your revolver. When I bring you this and say, okay, we need to make it even better than what it is, where do you go from there, Roy?
Well, I'd like to start by saying, first of all, if you have a hobby gun, a single action this or a double action that, and you want to make modifications to it, have a nice time. Do whatever you want to do.
Yeah. Because
chances are pretty good your life's not going to depend on it. If somebody brings me a gun like that and says, I want you to make this into a fighting pistol, and, you know, and I always tell them, why? And they go, well, you know, I want better sights, and I want an action job, and I want a melt, and I want a new crown, and I say, well, why? And they go, well, because, you know, if I'll be able to shoot better and all that. And I always say, well, no, I doubt that very much. You might shoot maybe 1 or 2% better, you know. I mean, you'll enjoy it, you'll have fun. I said, but it won't appreciably change things for you. And about that time, they just start to stare, you know.
You have punctured their favorite assumption.
Yeah, you know, and I don't mean that it's not good to do, but and we can go over that. But do you need to make modifications to your carry revolver so you can perform better in combat? No.
Yep.
I'm sorry, accessory makers.
Hey, those are our sponsors, okay?
I know. It's fun, and I'll clarify this, and I think Daryl Bulkey would agree with me, is that if you have trained up to the ability of your revolver, in other words, if now having a slightly gritty action or grips that don't quite fit you right, if you're beginning to notice that and that it's affecting your ability to perform up to the revolver's potential, well, then we need to talk about that, right? Jerry Michelet can pick up a dead stock Smith & Wesson Model 10 revolver with a 15-pound double action pull and shoot rings around everybody I know.
Yep.
And that's because he's trained up to the potential of whatever the gun is that he's shooting.
Yep. and I want to stop you right there. And I don't mean to take this a different direction, so let's try not to. But I think it's important to note that something that people don't look at is in the last, let's say 20 years, 15 years, there are very few guns on the market, semi or revolver, that you pick up and go, this would be good if I changed this or if we modified this. Again, there's a lot of different ways to go about this, but a dead stock whatever I would put up against the stuff 20, 30, 40 years ago. Most of the stuff out of the box is not bad, especially for someone who doesn't have a very high level of skills. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, I just tested 4 new Smith & Wesson revolvers, and three, a Model 36, a Model 19, and a Model 10. And the Model 10 was a dead stock 4-inch skinny pencil barrel, fixed sight, small grips, just what I was issued in my first 38 45 years ago. And you know what? They all had excellent actions. They had good sights. The grips were fine. They ejected, they fired. I mean, there was absolutely nothing wrong with these guns. And as a matter of fact, if you're listening to this, go see the short videos I did on them, and they all shot really, really well. And I don't mean this to toot my own petard or however that is, but they shot really, really well because I know how to shoot them.
Right.
I mean, I've grown up doing it. I've had training. I practiced hundreds of thousands of rounds. But I think it's proof that out of the box, as you say, modern guns are perfectly fine, with very rare exceptions. And I see a lot of guns that we get today, they look and act like custom guns of 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. I mean, better sights and, better ergonomics and better touches with engineering, and smoother extraction and polished chambers and a better crown. And I mean, that's a stock gun.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I just shot the new Grizzly, stainless steel Grizzly, and the darn thing shoots 1 inch at 25 yards.
Yep. And that's our most recent, I think it's our most recent cover gun. And I bought mine. I think you bought yours too, didn't you?
Well, I did. I was very impressed by it.
Yeah.
So, back to the guy, I want to customize revolvers. What modifications do you need for a custom carry revolver? And I will go on record and say you don't need any. You really don't. I mean, there are some nice things to do. There are some fun things to do. And as I can't stress this enough, there are things you can do to give you an extra 1 or 2% edge. When I shot a PPC shooting where we shot custom built heavy barrel revolvers, double action only, out to 50 yards in a controlled square range environment. Okay, I shot that for about 2 years using a stock 6-inch Smith & Wesson Model 19. Okay, so standard stock gun. It had a fairly smooth action because I'd had it for years and shot it a lot. It's a possible 600 on the score. I would usually shoot in the 570s, high 570s. Every once in a while I get the low 580s. And the masters were all shooting 598, 599, 600, right? And they always had these beautifully built guns. So I said, well, I'm going to do that. That's what's holding me back.
Mm-hmm.
So I went and built a custom PPC revolver. And my scores rocketed to pretty much 584, 585, right? It didn't magically make me a 600 shooter.
Yeah.
And because I still couldn't shoot up to the level of the gun, So I think that if you want to customize your revolver, that's really fine. But don't think that a technology fix is going to fix your inability to hit the target reliably, right?
Right. And I think there's a keeping up with the Joneses perspective to this too. And that's the worst reason to customize or modify guns. And we've all done it, especially in our younger days. But yeah, what I like on the forums is the guys who list not only their gun, but all the modifications they've done to it.
Always.
Why is that important to anyone? It's important to the guy that posts that because he wants you to know that he's
cool. He's
cool and a certified death dealer because he's got 47 aftermarket parts on this gun. And it's like, you're not impressing anybody.
No, and you have to remember this too, is that, short of an installation of sights, which even then you can get into trouble, but short of installation of sights and maybe a set of grips, unless the person who's doing the modifications really knows what they're doing, you're building a hot rod. And think about that for a minute, okay? So you have a factory Lexus on the one hand, your new Colt revolver, and on the other hand, you have a gun that you basically put together from parts. So if that was a Ford, we all know about hot rods. They run sometimes they don't. The engine's going to flood today. That rim's going to be loose tomorrow. The drive shaft's going to break. Unless it's Chip Foose, who really knows what he's doing when he builds a hot rod, right?
Yep.
So I'm going to go on record and say right now, if you took, doesn't matter, 2-inch gun, 4-inch fixed sight revolver, and you milled off the front sight, and you filled in the rear sight, and you didn't do anything else to the gun, it would be perfectly good gun to carry as a defensive gun. And you would shoot just fine, probably out to about 10 yards. And if you practice, you could probably shoot pretty darn good out to about 15 yards. And I know that because I've tried it. And as a matter of fact, I need to make a video about that.
Yep.
What prompted it was I was building a gun and I had a 3-inch heavy barrel somebody had cut off, and so it had no sights on it. And so I put the gun together and I fit the barrel, and I thought, I wonder what this would be like to shoot. And so I took it outside and I shot, and it shot fine.
Yep.
You come up in a stance, you've done it 10,000 times, you have good muzzle presence, you're indexing on the gun, you're squeezing the trigger correctly, and lo and behold, it shoots groups.
Huh.
And if you don't believe me, try it. Because it really, really does work. The next time you go and replace the front adjustable sight on your SIG auto pistol with a XS sight or something, when you remove the old one, shoot it at 7 yards. Which we all know that's where it all happens, toe-to-toe, 7 yards or so. And I think you'll be really surprised. But what that does for you, I think, also, is that it helps to instill in you some confidence because you know that the gun can function and the gun will work and it will defend you. And now what can you do to improve your chances? Right? Because I think it's a delicate balance. It is, you have a gun that works. Now you want a smoother action. All right. Unless you pick somebody who really knows what they're doing, you've just inserted a variable into this. Okay, I want to put a comp on it. Okay, but now you've inserted another variable. Now if you shoot up close, you're going to get comp blast to your face. I want to put a better adjustable rear sight. Okay, but is it mounted correctly? Is it secure? Is it a proven design? And then so when I was in the police academy, they issued me a 6-inch Smith & Wesson Model 10 pencil barrel gun. And it had this remember the small standard Smith & Wesson revolver grips?
Right.
Magna grips. I can't remember what they're called now. So this is about as plain vanilla of a gun as you could possibly have. It's something a security guard would have. And so I thought, well, you know what? We had inspections a couple times a week. So I kept my 6-inch Model 19 minty clean. And I never shot it. Right? So when we went to our twice weekly range, I used their 6-inch Model 10. And of course, there were people there with pythons and, and they were like on a first day, right? They don't know me. And they're like going, you should get a better gun than that because, that's that piece of shit issue gun that they're, and mine was an old gun too. It was a 4-screw gun. I mean, it was probably from the 50s or something. So that's what I used for my entire academy class. And I ended up being top gun in the academy. And it was really interesting because so after the first day or a couple times they saw what was happening. I was shooting really good and stuff like that. And then all the patters quieted down, and then they were coming up asking me questions. And then I was explaining about trigger press. And now there were instructors there too. And at one point the head instructor even said, and if you have questions and we're not available, check with Roy. He'll help you.
Wow.
Right, which is unheard of in a police academy environment, right?
Yeah.
So, and I'm not saying that for any reason other than to let you know that experience and practice and familiarity with your revolver is about 100 times more important than having the latest cutting edge modifications done to it. So I know people will disagree with me, but I have a feeling that we're going to see comments from people who've been doing this for 40 years. They're going to say, well, yeah, he's right. Now let's have fun though. You have your whatever 4-inch beat up Model 10.
Oh, I thought you were my Coyote.
Your Coyote, right? Yeah. Which that's actually a really good example. So what I see all the time is people though buy a gun, bring it in a box. Like a friend of mine, right? He'll come over and he'll say, look, I just bought this, fill in the blank, right? And I want would you do the action for me? And would you, put some new sights on it? And I always say, have you shot it yet?
No.
And they go, no, not really. But I know that I'm going to need, this and this. And I always say, well, no, you probably are not going to need all that. So
yeah.
Go put like 500 rounds through the gun and then let's talk again. And I'll help you fix your gun if you want to. And almost always if they come back, these are people I know, in the community here, shooters that I know. When they come back, a lot of times they'll say, well, actually these sights work pretty good. And I put these VZ grips on it. That seemed to really help, my grip a little bit. And so, I mean, I don't know. What do you think I should do to it?
Learning has occurred.
Learning has occurred. Yeah. So I think, okay, you have your 4-inch beater Model 10. Maybe it's a heavy barrel gun like an old 13 or something like that. Now you've shot it. You know the gun. You know where it shoots. You have a lot of experience with it. Your ability is improving. Now, what things might you do to this gun to help you gain those extra couple percentage points, right? I think the most important thing you should do is make sure the grip fits you. And so you can shoot any grip. You really can. And people need to be aware of that. Is it going to be perfect? Maybe not, right? But I mean, you can pick up a Desert Eagle, which feels like holding a 2x4.
Yeah. And
if you know what you're doing, you're going to be able to run the gun. You can pick up that little tiny 380 that you have right there with, I don't know, if it's a teeny tiny grip on it, and you can run the gun. I just shot a Colt Pocket 25 a couple of days for a video. It's just like I get like one finger on the grip, kind of, Well, guess what? It ran just fine. I hit the target just like I was supposed to, right?
Yeah.
And so grips are nice, but make sure you can run the gun. Okay, now put a set of grips on it. All right. Then I think the next thing you could do is, if it needs it, some action improvements will certainly make it smoother. And remember, what's smoother eventually is faster, right? So if your trigger pull is kind of gritty, and you're getting good to where you notice that it's gritty and it's beginning to hinder your ability to shoot even better, now it's time to do the action of the gun, and make sure someone who knows what they're doing is doing that too. It's really important.
I can't emphasize that enough now in the revolver sphere, because a lot of the guys that were the experts are retired or gone, and you got guys that'll work on them, but that's not what they do. And in the old days, you had guys that did that every day. So obviously they were better at it. It's kind of the idea of, do you go to a general surgeon or a heart specialist to have a heart transplant? So make sure you do your due diligence when you're looking to let somebody mess with your carry gun.
Well, I'm showing you, I don't know if you could see it. See this? Okay. Mm-hmm. Notes that I took, that I did. Bill Lockridge from Cylinder and Slide Shop, came to my house and we hosted a revolver build class here, and so I took it. That's the payoff for me hosting a class with him, is I get to take whatever the class is. Well, I have 20 pages of single-spaced handwritten notes on the things that we had to be knowledgeable about as we did these revolver modifications. And so many of these things are simply you get a 0.25% change by doing X, Mm-hmm. And so when you're done with everything, I think overall you might get a 5% total change, in how the gun runs. It'll be smoother. It'll time correctly. A lot of stock guns are slightly out of time. Does it really matter in the real world? No. But if you're after that last 0.25%, then you chase those things down. So the gun I built in the class is absolutely wonderful, but from the outside, it looks like a stock 4-inch heavy barrel Model 10.
Yep.
The only thing you can see, I didn't put sights on it or anything. I kept the stock grips. The only thing you can see on it is I polished the face of the trigger to make it smoother, because that way when you pull the trigger, your pad of your finger slides across the trigger as you pull it double action. Do you need to do that? No. But it's a little smoother, so it gives you that other little 0.25%, better. And then I put a Power Custom cylinder release on, which is this like oversized replacement cylinder latch, which is a drop-on part. You don't have to fit it or anything. But that way, it's been my experience, both on duty carrying a gun and in shooting the PPC matches, that releasing the cylinder and finding the latch with your thumb can sometimes be a little fumbly.
Right.
So having this really broad curved surface that captures your thumb, actually that makes sense in a modification. So, and then, okay, so we've done grips and we've done an action job. Let's say we've polished the face of the trigger too. Okay. Well, we're already past the point of what you probably need. The next step might be slightly chamfer the mouth of the chambers in the cylinder, because I'll be the first to admit sometimes revolvers, that edge can be pretty sharp. And especially in older guns, sometimes there's even a burr there as they broach it. So if you're loading from a speed loader, especially, sometimes it'll be a little bit catchy. You've done that, I'm sure, right? Yeah. You go load and it kind of, fumble with it for a second and get it to smooth in. Well, breaking that sharp edge can help to smooth that out a little bit. But all of this is based on the fact that you have been training, you have grips that fit, you have grips that are cleared for your speed loader, right? You know how to press the trigger. And now you're at a point to where you're honing your ability to reload reliably. Notice I didn't say fast, right? You're reloading reliably. because the more you do that, you'll get smoother, and we all know now that smoother is faster, right? And so that's really all I would do. But there's a long list of other things you can do. Do you need to Cerakote it? Do you need to checker the back strap? Do you need to slab the sides of the barrel? Do you need to put a new front sight on it? Do you need to open up the rear sight, to make it bigger and bolder? Do you need to melt it? And for those who don't know, melting means you just sort of break all the sharp edges of the gun. Think of a bar of soap that's been used a few times, right? And it's comfortable, and it makes the gun more comfortable to carry. You can recut the crown. Most factory crowns are adequate, right? But if you really want gilt edge accuracy, you want to shoot 50 yards and see what your gun can do, cut the crown and then recut the forcing cone. I like to polish the chambers if they're a little bit on the rough side. That helps with extraction. But I have to tell you that you don't need to do any of these things.
Yep.
And unless the gun's broken.
Well, we're both blessed to know pretty much anybody in the industry, especially that have been around the last 20, 30, 40 years. And what's interesting to me, and I've made this point many times, is number one, a lot of them carry revolvers as a primary or backup gun. And second, when you ask them, well, what have you done to it or what's modified? They'll tell you one or two things, maybe three, but you never ever have a Jerry Mischlick or somebody go, well, I've done this and I've done that and I've had this cut and I sent it off to here and I did this and I did that. And they never do that. Whereas the guy down at your local range, so that's an interesting gun. And it takes him a half an hour to tell you all the stuff he's done to it. Now, who's probably the better shooter there? So, that's not a one-for-one causation kind of thing. But again, I look at it as the guys that I know are truly the experts and the wizards and the magicians when it comes to shooting. They don't generally need to modify stuff. And if they do, it's like you said, to get that last 1-2%. So,
well, less is more, I think, in these situations, because it's like the AR-15 that we all make fun of. It's got every single thing on it in the world, including an espresso maker. Yeah. See, that's perfectly fine. And we're not making fun of you, maybe a little bit, but we're not making fun of you. If it's a fun gun, I just want to have fun with this gun. Great. Go do it. Buy every single thing you want to buy and put it on that gun. Yep. Right? But if you're asking us, what do you need on that gun? What do we use to defend ourselves with? I would, and I know Brent will do the same thing. I would always say less is more. The more basic, you can pound a nail with a hammer. Do you need a pneumatic nail pounder?
Yeah. A crew-served nail pounder with extra, air compressor and all that stuff.
Well, yeah, because, I have one. I use it. It's a big air gun thing, but like you say, it's like, oh, it's crap, it's not working, and the air compressor fuse blew, right? Meanwhile, I'd still be pounding nails with my hammer. Yeah. So I know a guy I've picked up Jerry Mischlick revolvers. I've looked at them and run the actions and stuff like that. And you know what? They're all pretty much dead stock guns. They really are. Yeah. Except Jerry's a very talented pistol smith, and I know you can feel he's certainly done the actions. Mm-hmm. And I know for me, I'm not comparing myself to Jerry, but for me, a really smooth double action trigger pull is probably the most important modification that I would ever do to my own guns. Truly, that is the thing I think that really helps, because then you can concentrate more on the target, on the threat, and the staging of the trigger and the smooth trigger pull, which won't disturb your sight, picture, is what adds the most to it, But remember, Ed McGivern in the 30s, Ed was the first Jerry, he was shooting, 6 rounds in less than 0.2 of a second, in those days, and hitting a playing card sized target at 7 yards. Mm-hmm. So if you can go to YouTube and look up Ed McGivern, you'll see some old YouTube videos of him, and so his hand's down by his gun, and no, it's all silent. There's no audio, but still, you see this kind of middle-aged, frumpy little fat guy, right? And he is blindingly fast Gun comes out, there's one puff of smoke, all 6 shots are gone, right? And he used to use dead stock Smith & Wesson guns.
Yep.
They were dead stock.
How is that possible? Stock is not a thing.
Yeah, how is that possible?
Yeah.
See, I think there's a certain amount of, I don't know what the right word is, but pride, I don't know. But if you go tomorrow and buy one of these new Smith & Wesson revolvers, they have the 4-inch 19 is really, really nice. And so is the Model 10. Buy that gun, bring it home, clean it, put a little oil in the action, dry fire it a couple 300 times and make sure things are settled in. Now just shoot the hell out of it.
Yeah.
Get a Lee single stage press, learn how to load 38 special wad cutters, because that's part of it. If you learn that, then you understand the ammo side of things, and just shoot the snot out of it, and then start to think about what you want to do.
Yep. And I was going to mention something that I know Daryl Bulkey's talked about. This gun, for example, I'm going to keep it next to my chair and continually dry fire it and cycle it. And that is the cheapest, easiest action job you can make on a gun. Safety is important, of course, and that's not a good idea if you got little ones around the house. But if you're in a position where you can keep a gun near your chair when you're watching TV and dry fire it a couple of 100 times a night, that's going to smooth that action out. You may still want a trigger job, but don't be thinking about a trigger job until like Roy said, it's all broken in and the mating surfaces have had a chance to kind of rub against each other. And what that does, aside from mechanically, is it gets you used to that trigger pull. And dry firing is the secret to what a lot of the really good shooters do, because you can't get to the range every day. If you can, that's great. It'd be like Roy and shoot off your back porch, but most of us can't get there. So dry firing is a really useful tool to train yourself and to train the gun to get it to work better.
If you have, yes, completely, and be safe. If you buy a good gun, you buy a Smith & Wesson or a Colt or a Taurus or a Charter or something like that, right? You buy a good gun, put a little oil in the action, because I almost always need that when they're new. Dry fire it till it seats in. That also helps if you've got a custom pistol smith, because when I take a gun apart and I look inside a new gun that's had this process done to it, maybe the guy's had it a year or two, he shot it 500 rounds or 1,000 rounds or something. I can see where the problems are then. Mm-hmm. I can see where the wear is. I can see that the hammer's brushing the side plate. I can see a lot of that kind of stuff. Eddie Janis, who has sadly passed away a couple years ago, was the owner of Peacemaker Specialists, and he did absolutely the most amazing action jobs on Colt single actions that you will ever see in your life. When you cock one, it feels like it's broken. I think you may have cocked one or two when you visited with me. Yeah. You cock it and people always look up at you. Yeah. And they can't believe that was real. Yeah. What's real? What I learned from Eddie was that if you replace the springs in a single action, it may lighten the trigger pull. It may lighten the cocking of the gun, but it won't fix the parts that aren't fit correctly. Mm-hmm. So it'll still wear. And chances are good that the springs will still fail, early, which they tend to do. So what Eddie does is Eddie used to very carefully fit all the mating surfaces, and he made some proprietary modifications, recut some angles and stuff like that. So basically all of the parts work together seamlessly. Think of two gears meshing perfectly. Normally with the action of a gun, it's like that. You know what I mean? It's like they mesh pretty good, but not really perfectly. And so Eddie said, once you get things to mesh perfectly, then that's less wear on the gun. It'll pretty much last forever. And he's right. And so I think once you break in your gun, if you think you need it, that's when you need to talk to a good pistol smith. Yep. But yeah, make sure it's not the guy at the local gun store who's a parts replacer, Yeah. And if you go in there and immediately they start telling you, well, you need to do this and this and this and this, and I'm going to buy a new replacement hand, and we're going to redo the DAC, I'm going to recut that angle, and I'm going to do all that kind of stuff. Just go, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah. Are you sure?
Yeah. I just want you to smooth the action. I don't want you to make any big modifications to anything,
Yep. Well, I was going to say we're probably running long. I haven't even looked at the time, but there's these aren't really modifications per se, but I'm getting this question more and more. On a carry revolver, a TV on top or a light? Your thoughts?
Not on carry gun, in my opinion. If it's a competition gun, if it's a fun gun, if you're a hunter and you're hunting with a revolver, there are some guns with a rail on the bottom, and if that's the case, then maybe a light is appropriate, if you're hunting, so you can see what you're doing or whatever. But I don't think on a carry gun, especially a revolver, and I've mounted sights on revolvers. Before that was anything that most people ever did, lights. I mounted a light on a single action Army style revolver one time. Right? I just was curious, could you do it? And we did. A friend of mine put a red dot sight on one, and yeah, you can do all that. Can you put a 454 engine in a Volkswagen? Yes. People have done that behind the seat.
Yep.
Fills up the whole compartment back there. And that's fine, but you just remember you don't need to do that. And so I think like that little gun that you have, or most of the comments I see, you and I did a show on J-frames, or small frame revolvers, are they dead, or it was something like that. And almost all the comments from people who've been around a while, right, say the same thing. I carry a small frame revolver in my right front pocket, and it's to get the bad guy off of me.
Exactly.
And to help me get away.
Yep.
Right. And if that's the case, I don't know. Do you need a light on it? Do you need a TV set on the top? Do you need,
I didn't want to weigh in before you did, because I wanted to hear your opinion, but that's exactly where I'm at. I'm not against it. And if you want to carry it, well, knock yourself out. But I would bet my next paycheck that if you put that stuff on, especially a smaller revolver, it'll last 2-3 weeks tops, if not sooner. And you'll realize that's why a lot of folks don't do it. So if you're considering carrying a revolver, or you're carrying a revolver and you think, man, I need a TV set on top and a light, go ahead and try it. You need to try stuff. Maybe it'll work for you, but none of my carry revolvers, and as I've talked, I've become a convert of the small revolver in the pocket, to the point I've gone places where I maybe shouldn't have and forgot I had a gun in my pocket. So as you said, Roy, and as Daryl's talked previously, we don't have to run toward gunfire anymore. Our job is to be a scared little bunny and get out. And if a bad guy happens to intercept me in that flight with a small gun in my pocket, I can deal with the problem at close range. I'm not going to be trying to take out a tango at 50 yards and he's shooting at me. Hopefully, preferably, I'll already be down the street by the time he wants to start putting rounds my direction. So
I look upon it as I look at the can of wasp spray I keep at the front door. It's like you step outside, there is a wasp right there trying to kill me. So you grab the spray and you spray it, and then you scream like a girl and run inside.
Yeah.
Well, I just used my J-frame Smith & Wesson. you know
exactly.
I have to say though, for this whole light thing, I actually thought hard about that, and I was looking at a laser grip one time some years ago, and I thought, well, why can't this be a light?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I actually worked with a couple people. I worked with High Score, the owner of High Score. They make targets and accessories and things like that. And we actually developed, it's called the Grip Light. You can find it. If you Google it, you'll find it. I think they sell them on Amazon even. And it's a replacement grip for a round butt J-frame revolver. And it's got a light on the side. Ah. Now, it's not a 5,000 lumen light,
Yeah.
I think it's 80 lumens or something like that, 100 lumens, but it's surprisingly effective. And so that does give you, the grip's a little bigger, of course, than I would have wanted, but you have to because you've got a battery in here now.
Yeah.
And it doesn't use little CR123. It uses an actual real, this, what are the CR?
The CR123s.
123, yeah, CR123. Yeah. They make that one, and they make one that's a little bit shorter. That's the battery it uses, so it's a pretty serious battery. And so that's where I kind of compromised on the J-frame. I said, that's pretty handy. You tuck that in your back pocket and go take the trash out, and now if there's anything going on, there it is right there. It all works. Yep. But even that, I don't have that on the gun that I carry in my pocket.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, I fully agree, especially for a duty gun, for the police and the military. Because you got to be real, you're searching, you're in total darkness. And that's the other thing. People talk about darkness. As non-law enforcement folks, I'm rarely in pitch dark. I'm not searching a warehouse. There's a street light, there's moonlight, there's lights from the house. So I will never say don't put a light on your gun, but I don't. At least not my revolvers. Semi-autos, they're a lot easier. So I've actually got a couple that I put a light on, and lights are getting so much smaller and so much brighter. But having said that, it's rare that I carry them. Only in certain circumstances.
Well, see, so that means something, though.
Yeah.
Although after having this conversation, I've got a Rock Island Armory Armscore M206. It's a little 2-inch revolver, and I customized it. I wrote it up in the Insider. I made a video about it. But I can see now that I'm going to have to buy some $30 red dot sight on Amazon and figure out some little light. And the next time you see it, it's going to have a TV set on the top and then a light mounted underneath. And we'll see what happens.
There you go. Well, Roy, thanks for talking about revolver modifications. I hope we've kind of walked some folks through that maybe not sure what they need to do to their revolver. And I always go back to the advice that was given to me a long time ago. Before you buy or pay money to have something done, spend the equivalent in ammunition and make sure you really need that modification. When we've said that before, but that's, if you're going to drop $300 on go faster cylinder release, maybe $300 worth of ammunition might be a better investment, especially at first. So something to think about.
I agree completely. So, but remember though, so we don't get the naysayers and whiners, we're not saying you shouldn't build a custom revolver.
Right.
Not at all. But our question was, what modifications do you need? And those are very, very few.
Yeah. Yep.
So
well, I'll be interested to see the comments down below on YouTube. And of course, you can always reach out, editor at gunsmagazine.com. And I get a lot more, I'm getting more mail from there. And I forward that to Roy because of course they always say, hey, we like your podcast, but here's what I want to ask Roy. So I always send those along. But anyway, thank you. We survived the storms yesterday. And so hopefully we'll be around to talk more about revolvers and whatever else the audience would like us to talk about. We do listen to what you say and come up with great ideas for the podcast. So anyway, Roy, we will talk again soon. Thanks very much. Well, it was great talking to Roy Huntington, as always, and hopefully we gave you a few ideas on how to modify or not your carry revolver. Before we go, a couple of quick housekeeping notes. As always, I'd ask you to please like and subscribe the podcast if you haven't already. That's the best way you can support us here at the Guns Magazine podcast and everything we do at FMG Publications, which, by the way, if you want to subscribe to Guns Magazine or American Handgunner Magazine or buy one of our great special interest publications or books such as Roy's Insider book or John Connor's Odd Angry Shot, you can do that by going to fmgpubs.com. All that stuff is there and you can buy it. You can also buy most of the books on Amazon. And before we go, of course, don't forget our great sponsor, Armasight. Step up your game with Armasight's cutting-edge thermal and night vision monoculars. Stop looking, start seeing. Well, that's it for this episode of the Guns Magazine podcast. On behalf of everybody who works so hard here at FMG Publications, I am Guns Magazine editor Brent Wheat, reminding you yet again for another week, now get out there and get shooting.